Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Cott, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Strength in the Numbers. Now our guest mentor today is Mike Huthwaite, and Mike started his finance and accounting career 18 years ago as a consultant, but is now founder and CEO of Finance Seer LLC, and Mike's company won Gartner's Cool New Vendor Award and counts large multinationals such as Chrysler and British Airways amongst its customers. Whilst as a finance professional, Mike has set up an amazing company, what we spend most of our time talking about is integrative planning. Mike is a recognised expert and global thought leader on integrative planning, so some of the areas we cover in the episode is why agile influencing is important for finance accounting professionals and also what type of agile approach works best for us. Also, Mike goes into the distinction between push and pull projections in integrative planning and why that is actually quite important for how much impact we can make in the business. And also Mike makes a further case for a strategic finance function and what this might look like or involve if we chose to do something like this. So look, there's really great insights in this show, really valuable stuff that drives sustainable growth. And this is another topic we talk on. So I highly encourage you to check the timestamp show notes with some of the key quotes from the episode. And you can find those at signshow.com/podcast/062. So that's enough for me. So without further ado, over to Mike and the show.
Sure, I'd love to. So I started my career in finance and accounting about 18 years ago with a company called Alcar. Alcar is a modeling and strategy company that focused on discounted cash flow valuation. It was founded by two professors from Kellogg School of Management in Chicago, and it was a great first job.
Okay.
I traveled around the globe, helped companies, set their strategy, and all the while, I was 22 when I started. I never bought milk in the morning or on the weekends because I wasn't sure if I was going to be around during the week to drink the milk. But that said, it was a great introductory to finance and accounting.
And like in terms of how your journey's progressed since then, sort of what other experiences did you pick up?
Yeah, sure. So actually, interesting thing about technology is that over time it tends to get consolidated and acquired, and that's really what happened with Alcar. So I think in 2003 it was acquired by Hyperion Solutions, which was then acquired by Oracle. So that really pushed my background from being purely on the strategy, valuation, modeling side to being able to really sort of integrate that into a more integrated business planning process with kind of your typical tactical budgeting and forecasting processes. So although I wasn't heavy in the tactical budgeting and forecasting activities, I was very heavy in the linkage of that all the way through strategy. So that's kind of the space I operate in today, and that's the space I feel very comfortable with, and that's the area that I call home.
All right. So in terms of that area you call home, like how did you get familiar with that? I mean, a number of our audience are also operating in that space. Sort of what practical steps could they perhaps follow that you've learned that you might be able to share with them and us to help them get a bit more comfortable?
Yeah, well, I think it helped in my situation that the Alcar company, my first company, was founded by two professors that focused on valuation. Mm-hmm. So it sort of banged it into our heads that we had to understand discounted cash flow valuation, and I think we went in very kind of heavy and deep into the concept, to almost to a fault, because to this day I'm still extremely passionate about long range planning, the focus on the future. And creating shareholder value. So you get this concept of a lot of people are focusing on sales or operating profit or just certain areas of the financial relationship, and it's really sort of just a local efficiency if you think about it. So you can optimize a certain element, but the whole system is really about creating sustainable cash flow. So I would recommend trying to have that broader view. Obviously, we talk about the broader view of financial data and so forth, but just have the broader view of the relationship of finance and don't focus on kind of the individual localized efficiencies.
Okay, so what does so do you maybe sort of give us some tips as to how to make sure we look at that broader view? I mean, what how would we know we're looking at the broader view rather than the local sort of efficiencies?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of companies, they'll be given sort of a directive or something that says something like, we need to grow market share, or we need to, increase net income, for
Yeah.
example, right? And those are really just local efficiencies.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
most companies do pretty well when they focus on some of those leading sort of indicators, I guess, or obvious areas for improvement. But some companies actually literally go out of business or struggle to actually sustain that growth.
Completely agree.
So you can go in and you can increase your market share only to find out that the cost of acquisition to get into that market was greater than the incremental revenue, or you can find out that it's just not sustainable, right? So it's good for 1 year or 2 years and then it falls back out. Both of those cases are examples of really not looking at the financials as a whole system where sustainable growth is the ultimate output. And so it's just having that broader view. And I think the best thing we can do as finance people is really to educate the company on that message.
Yes.
We don't need them to be experts in finance, nor do we want them to be, but understanding that kind of whole operational system, if you will, in a finance sense, I personally don't think is too tough. And I think it's well worth our experience as finance people to get the rest of the business understanding that.
Yeah, I really like how you got to the sustainability point, Mike, because for me, I work with multinationals and with SMEs, and yes, there's this sort of chasing of growth, and ideally profitable growth, but sometimes what gets missed in the race is that sustainability angle. And I think as finance professionals, we have this responsibility to make sure decisions are taken in a sustainable manner. I mean, if you look at, I think there was some analysis done around the Fortune 500, and the list that was there 2000 in year 2000, apparently 60% of those are no longer on the list. And they were massive companies, yet they didn't. I'd say with probably very large accounting and finance departments, yet they didn't build sustainable businesses. So, so in what you're sort of saying then, Mike, if I catch you right, is it really comes back to taking that broader view and how to create and drive shareholder value. So in terms of our audience, if they were to take maybe 2 or 3 small steps to do that, towards that building a more sustainable business or helping their organizations have more sustainable decisions, impacting decisions, maybe what 2 or 3 steps they could perhaps take?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So when we think about it, right, we're thinking about that sustainability, that growth, kind of the finance world. We've all heard probably the Gordon growth valuation model, which relies very heavily on a letter named G, which is growth, right? So how do you sustain that growth? And we all have in our mind kind of this different vision or view of what growth would look like. But I think broadly, really what growth looks like, it's not a straight line. It's not linear. It's not flat. Usually what it is for organizations is it's actually what we would call, it's got a lot of different names, but I typically use the J curve.
Okay.
So it starts off, you invest in a product that kind of, you're investing, so it's going down, and then it eventually swings up, hits a plateau at the top. That's when you're investing in the business, but your growth is kind of sustaining, and then eventually it kind of falls back down a little bit. So I think the key is, without going into too much detail there, is really to understand where your business is, break it down into different subunits, and figure out where your strategy really lives, i.e. where are you sustaining growth and what stage are you in? Are you in an investment stage? Are you in the growth stage, the plateau, decline, steady state? And I think that's literally the best piece of advice I could give anyone who's kind of getting into strategy or looking at strategy analytics. It's about the big picture. It's not about an individual revenue or individual cost. It's about the big picture, how it interacts, and then understanding where your business is, what stage it's in, so you can optimize that, right? You want to stay in growth stage as long as you can. Staying in plateau is not a bad thing. You're still creating value. You obviously want to get out of the investment stage typically pretty early, but that's the best information I can give, and I think that's the best visual that I've ever used when it comes to analytics and strategy, is that sort of J curve idea.
Yeah, look, I do sort of see what you're saying. I actually do agree with that as well. I think what we do is we try, probably guilty, maybe, I don't know, of our schooling or whatever, to try and reduce things to linear models. The world doesn't operate in a linear fashion. I mean, look at the seasons, the cycles, economic cycles, boom, bust. It's not straight line. So, we have to appreciate that there's a lifetime associated with any decisions we make. And it's figuring out where we are in terms of that curve, whatever that curve looked like. And again, I think that's where analytics and modeling come into play. Actually, speaking of which, you must have seen some particularly strange, crazy, unique cases during your career, working with different businesses and analysing those. Any key sort of things stand out to you, or any key examples you could perhaps share with our audience?
Yeah, well, obviously, so I was very diverse in the companies that I looked at. So everything from pig farms to steel companies to utilities to you name it. And so, I mean, getting back to the pig farm concept, I mean, to see sort of number of kills and things like that on the P&L was a bit of an eye opener. What I found most interesting, really what pushed me forward the most, was that even though I dealt with a lot of different companies, a lot of different business plans, the real problems that they encountered were actually the same exact problems. And those problems were really down to sort of agility, the ability to really, communicate differences in ideas.
Okay.
So, just being able to really share those differences of opinion, and in order to form consensus and really take on sort of an influencer role and try to influence others, it's very difficult. So you can think about it, in your mind. You're sitting, you present some information to a CFO, let's say. CFO has a bunch of different ideas. It's already late at night, wants the answers really quickly. That's the whole iterative nature that can't be avoided especially in strategy. It's all about being agile and being able to turn on a dime and to change different ideas and to see if that makes sense. If it doesn't, throw it away. That's really what it's all about. And that was always the most difficult thing to do. So, building a model, an initial model, wasn't a challenge. In fact, one of the biggest challenges I had in pre-sales was to explain to someone why, I can have an analyst here and that analyst can build a great model, and that model will be great and work perfectly for the strategic planning model. Why do I need to, get consulting and buy their services and so forth? And the answer was always, it doesn't matter where your model is when you start the modeling process, right? It's where your model ends at the end of the planning process, and how many iterations did it go through, and how many different ideas did you discuss, debate, ultimately throw away most of them, but form consensus around the best ideas. And that's a real challenge.
Okay.
But that was the problem people were experiencing.
So look, that seems I think is a challenge a lot of us have faced when developing models and then having conversations around them. And would it be fair to say the concept you're sort of proposing is like being like agile influencers then? Is that a sort of a good term to describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. And agile gets used a lot in a lot of different contexts. I think sometimes agile gets used to mean efficient.
Yeah.
And really that's not what I'm talking about here at all. I'm talking more true, agile framework that we hear kind of from the IT, the development space. So the idea that, a waterfall approach to addressing how to build a solution or answer a problem is really not going to work in the strategy world. We need to be able to start with a prototype. Yep. We need to be able to, that could be one person spearheading that initiative and then swarming that or inviting other people to come into that process and to make suggestions and alternatives in a way that in today's world, right, here's the challenge in today's world is, if you took an environment and you allowed everyone to make suggestions and alternatives, you'd end up with a major version control issue. And so how do you avoid that version control? How do you make those different ideas actually come across like communication and suggestions so that it's easy to piece together what is the optimal strategy? So then you can take that strategy and send that down to tactical planning, which is budgeting and forecasting. These are actually some of the things that we're working on with finance here. And again, this has been my passion project for the last few years.
Yeah, we love discussing people's passions on this show. So in terms of maybe your passion at the moment or what's exciting you most, Mike, do you mind maybe sharing a bit more about that with our audience?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think, I I know the audience is probably full of finance and accounting people. I do think technology is really shaping the way we are going to do things in the future. I think you're seeing that a lot, both on the tactical side of planning, so again, the budgeting, forecasting side, as well as on the strategic side. So I think on the tactical side, again, tactical to me is all about efficiency, building efficiency and mitigating risk. And I think you're seeing a lot of that with even things like AI. I know that's a pretty popular buzzword, but I think AI is pushing that boundary quite well. Prescriptive analytics, getting the idea that the computer is going to make suggestions for us. I think that's coming along. But that's not the space that I operate in. Again, I'm more on the other side, which is the strategic side, which I don't believe will benefit from AI at all. I don't think it'll benefit from risk. And the reason why I say that is because in the strategy world, you're beyond very strong levels of probability. You're sort of in the space of, I need to influence the world, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, then you really should influence the direction of things. And that's what strategy is all about. And the exciting thing there again is just the proliferation of Agile. I think it's just at the cusp in the finance world. But I think we look around, we talk to people, people have a great understanding of Agile and Agile tools, team-based tools. We're not talking enterprise tools per se here. We're talking about, team-based tools for teams to get things done. And there's a whole host, not in the finance world per se, but, with, Slack and, Microsoft Teams and all these solutions out there in other industries and just in general usage that are really bringing kind of team-based collaboration and Agile approaches. I think there's a lot of buzz and excitement there in the finance world.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, on the one hand, like similarly, I'm very excited about the technology agenda, digital finance, and the disruption and opportunity that's causing. But I definitely don't think it's the magic pill. I think it's a case of it'll get us a lot of efficiencies in the short term, but a lot of the initial AI I'm seeing and the influence of that, I don't think it's got the ability to influence or impact or compete even with our abilities to appreciate context and empathy in terms of getting some of these strategies over the line.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. I think it's another way to say that is just objective and subjective, right? I think we have this world where we're building up a lot of and this actually is also what I like to refer to as kind of push and pull.
Okay.
So we're getting a lot of push and pull projections. So we're in a position now where we have more information. It's more relevant than ever before. So we're taking that information and we're pushing it forward with projections. And AI is certainly very, very guilty of that. And that's what it leverages, right? It leverages relevant data. But I think there's going to be a wall there between where that's going to be very effective. I think a lot of that information that we use today has a fidelity that kind of disappears over time. And plus, strategy is really about understanding what works today and breaking it, right? It's about being disruptive, so you can go into markets and opportunities. You can expand, current constraints, break down bottlenecks. Those require investments today, usually. But then you go in and you take advantage of those. So it's really not about the data. So in that world, it's about influencing, which is another way of saying it's about pull planning. Yeah. So being able to take that data and pull it across and plan that way. And it's really the harmony of both is what really integrated planning is all about. But the confusion in a lot of cases is we need just one or we can use just the other. And that's where a lot of mistakes occur.
Yeah, actually, I think you're the first person I've spoken with, Mike, that has actually, I think you've probably hit the strategy nail on the head there, because in my mind, strategy is all about trying to break things and figuring out how to disrupt, whether that's an internal assumption or something externally within our own industry, or as a lot of other companies are finding to their advantage now, is industries that they've never competed in before. I think that's a big concern for a lot of finance leaders I'm speaking with, is actually they're now under threat from companies in other industries, and they got a sense that a few years down the line they'll be having new competitors from industries that they've not even conceived before now going into their traditional space.
Right.
So
yes, absolutely.
So it's really about breaking down boundaries, as you were sort of saying as well. So Again, I think I really like how you described that for our audience. So appreciate you doing that, Mike.
Sure. And just one little point on that, and that's why I bring it back to the J curve, because the J curve shows the investment, right? That's the initial downturn. That's how you break. That's how you make the investment into breaking and hacking the current approach, and then the growth comes out of that on the outside. And then what you're looking at again in the long run is opportunities. So you're screening for opportunities, and on the other side, it's not really risk that you're looking to mitigate, because risk implies probability. What you're really looking at is the threats. So it could be corporate threats, competitor threats, could be these black swans we talk about. Those are the things that we need to be constantly screening and evaluating for, and that requires kind of an always-on agile approach.
Yeah, just in terms of scanning for those, I'm being a bit cheeky here, Mike, but you're probably sharing some of your proprietary insights with us, but I'll ask anyway. So is there any sort of tips for making sure that we're scanning for some of those black swans that we probably find difficult to even imagine at this point in time?
Yeah, sure. So this is again where my passion lies right now, and I think there's sort of two areas that need to be dug into. I think one, we need to the people, process, technology. I think we need to help the right people involved in strategy by really putting forward the right processes and the right technology. So let me just go on the processes side for a second. So I think, we talk about strategic planning, but quite frankly, that word is very watered down. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. A lot of times what happens, even if it is in the finance space, it's very structured. It's done once a year for a couple weeks at best. It's not really believed in very much. Quite frankly, it's its own worst enemy in many cases. Maybe that's a little harsh. So I'm actually, one of my initiatives is really to push the benefits or the needs for what we call a strategic finance function, and that is sort of a partner to finance, but also a partner to the business that is constantly screening for opportunities and threats. Okay. So as we said in the last part. So really focusing on that, understanding, taking the goals from senior executive, turning them into value creation plans that can get challenged and discussed and debated, and obviously then hand it off to the budgeting process so that it can become a reality. So on the process side, that's really where I'm focused, and then on the technology side with Financier, we're building out that sort of first solution that really focuses again on enabling anyone to evaluate any different modeling idea, whether that be different assumptions, different rules, be able to add or change those rules in real time, whether you're sitting in a conference room with a group of people or whether you're back at your desk, and really capture those activities, those changes as deltas, as incrementals, and be able to share those in a way that that feels like communication and doesn't create version control issues. So we're looking at things like a branch and merge. So branch and merge is a great technology in the IT space. So a lot of developers are using tools like Git to branch and merge their code that they're writing all across the world. But when it comes to doing that in the modeling world, we sort of prefer these sort of core-based data solutions or architectures where everything is centralized and centrally controlled and managed, and it's just not very effective for strategy.
Yeah, that sounds like finance probably has a bit way to come, which is why you're sort of proposing that there's a strategic, is it like a strategic finance function that serves the business as well as finance?
Yeah, I think so. So I think it would make perfect sense to rather than take business people and try to make them finance people, or take finance people and try to make them business people 100%. Really optimize the both, the strengths of both. Yeah. And I think finance can bring this kind of concept of agile financial modeling. They can embed themselves within the business. Maybe they're the person that starts the sprint, for example, and then they quickly invite others into the sprint process. Again, with different branching and merging, you're allowing different individuals in the business to suggest different ideas. If those ideas aren't very good, well, we can discuss, debate, maybe discard, or we can discuss, debate, and keep. Either way, all that branching and merging, all that conversation is really still kept. So we have a full record of how thoroughly we evaluated different ideas in different businesses, and that's the way that really strategic planning or strategic finance really should work. Shouldn't be that kind of very rigid once a year, 2-week
Yeah,
process.
definitely.
It doesn't work. I mean, if I can real quick,
Yeah.
I'll just give you a little example.
Yeah, I'd
So
love to. Yeah, I'd love to.
let's say you're walking down the street here. This is an analogy, by the way. You're walking down the street. It's dark at night. You have a flashlight or a torch in your hand, and you kind of know where you're going, so you're kind of walking straight down the path. But you're kind of using your flashlight or your torch to kind of go to the left, to the right a little bit. You're sort of looking for maybe a different path that might be a little less rocky, or you're looking for maybe a critter to jump out or something. So that's your opportunity, and that's your threat. You're kind of moving your flashlight back and forth. You're really screening for opportunity, and you're doing that the whole time you're walking. All right. And obviously, at certain points, you might be in a darker area. Even you might flash it around even a little bit more, a little bit faster, more vigorously. Other times, maybe not so much. But at the same time, you're not walking that same path. I mean, your feet are still firmly on the path. You're still going forward, and you're just kind of keeping your eye out for alternatives. And that's kind of really sort of one of the best analogies I can kind of come up with sort of strategic finance function. It's just a constant screening process, looking for opportunities. Yes, most things you won't take advantage of, but it's the need to do that, because that's really where the value is. Let's talk about the budgeting process, saying, it takes too long. We're always doing it, and I always want to compact that process, which is true. You do, but on the strategy side, it doesn't involve everyone. It involves less people, less time, less effort, but it's something you want to do more of. I mean, the more you can evaluate alternative ideas and opportunities and catch the market on an early side and find disruption, that's a good thing. We should be doing more of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like the way you did that analogy, Mike. And for me, I'm a firm believer in the strengths-based approach. So in finance, we have many strengths, and yes, in some people, we've probably developed that agile approach to strategy and influencing already, and therefore we've got an existing strength. But like in terms of, particularly we come from a smaller company environment, I find where we're probably given the responsibility for doing pretty much everything, whereas larger companies, finance might have lost the ability to do that. So I can sort of see what you're saying. I can sort of see the value of constantly monitoring the environment. And I again, it's an important activity, whether it sits in finance or not. It needs to be done by the business. Otherwise, there will be no sustainable business. So appreciate you going to that concept. Now, Mike, I've got to shift it up a few gears, and I'll ask you some rapid fire questions. Yeah, I know.
Found my kryptonite.
Yeah, there we go. Yep. So in terms of advice, you probably received bits over the years. What's been the best bit of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I don't know if it's advice or if it's just kind of sunk in over time, but I think I would say persistence and grit. I mean, those are the two things. They sort of mean the same thing. But I think having persistence or building up persistence is really the key to success, right? So you can be very intelligent, super smart, you can be a subject matter expert on something, but really what the key is in success, and even long-term success, is really to just maintain and consistently be persistent and have grit. Don't give up, keep moving forward, grind it out, put the hours in, do the reps. That's been the thing that was given to me probably as a piece of advice, and I would have to say that's the one thing that's kind of helped me out the most over the years.
When we're putting that persistence and grit in, it's a case of also maintaining the energy levels as well.
Yeah, it can be tough.
It's like, but I think, just imagine, particularly when serving clients, modeling and consulting with them, I think there could be pretty long weeks, and as you said, there's no point in you buying milk previously. In terms of maybe resources you could recommend our audience, would there be any particular book you could perhaps share with us that you found useful, and maybe our audience would as well?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. So I think a book I read recently, which was suggested to me from a friend, that I would recommend, I think is actually very applicable actually to the discussion, is a book called A Curious Mind. And it's by a man named Brian Grazer, Grazer. So Brian is a producer in Hollywood, and he produced A Beautiful Mind.
Great show.
I think he worked on that with Ron Howard. I think those two are a tandem team. Mm-hmm. But A Curious Mind is really the concept of, as kids, we're naturally very curious, but over time we sort of lose our curiosity.
Yeah.
And he's really talking about how if you just maintain that curiosity, it'll actually make you a much better leader, right? You'll ask the right questions. You'll develop a knack for asking the right questions. When you don't know an answer, sometimes the answer just comes about. Even the person you ask the questions to solves their own problem sometimes by just asking questions. So I found it to be a really positive read. And he used it in all sorts of circumstances. I mean, even in situations where he felt uncomfortable, a little nervous, he was kind of the big lights were on him a little too early and he didn't know what to do, but just asking the right questions it enabled him to really assess the situation, not only help himself make good decisions for the team, but in some cases he just asked the right questions, and those questions helped other people, in their functions as well. So it was really kind of a multiplicative benefit. So I would say that's a very good read, and I definitely recommend it.
Thanks for sharing that resource, Mike. And then I suppose in terms of if any of our audience wish to follow up with you after the show, what's the best way to connect with you at?
Yeah, sure. So LinkedIn would be a great one. So I'm on there, Michael Huthwaite. You might stumble across my retired father as well on there, but otherwise I'm the non-retired guy. But otherwise, our website's always a good place to go as well. So that's Financier. So it's www.financeseer.com. We'd be glad to get back to you there as well.
That's fantastic, Mike. And look, I'll put all those resources and website links into the show notes as well. That'll go out after the show. And Mike, I just wanted to sort of say thanks for taking the time to invest with us today to talk about some of our challenges with strategic financial planning, around agility as well, and also reinforcing the idea of sustainability in our businesses as well, which again I think is very important concepts to our audience, to make sure that we actually end up having fun, rewarding and successful careers in finance as well, because we haven't got sustainable businesses, we won't have sustainable chances for opportunities for us to grow as well. So really appreciate you coming onto the show today, Mike. Thanks a mil.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. It was my pleasure.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.